now we will talk about the digital playground. And as I mentioned before, we have a wonderful woman with us from Australian eSafety Commissioner. Yes, move in the big auditorium for our next keynote session. As we've heard during these couple of days, of course, bullying is also a problem online. And to fight this, we will listen to our next keynote speaker, and I'll say a little bit of this if you haven't heard it before. She will focus on the unique role of eSafety and the citizen-focused services that the eSafety Office provides all Australians with. And she has a background at the US Congress and the non-profit sector before taking on a role at Microsoft, ultimately in the role of Global Director for Safety and Privacy Policy and Outreach. And at Twitter, she set up and drove the company's policy, safety, and philanthropy programs across Australia, New Zealand, and the Southeast Asia. And as commissioner, she has led work to stand up novel and world-first regulatory regimes under the new Online Safety Act 2021. Please welcome with us Julie Inman Grant.
Thank you, and hello everyone. I'm so pleased to be joining you, the world's preeminent anti-bullying researchers, advocates, and policymakers, on such a critical issue that impacts so many children around the world. I hope this is the start of a long association with the forum, and I do wish I could be with you in Sweden today. But alas, we are just emerging from 20 months of lockdown, so I am joining you from Gadigal country here in Sydney, Australia. I also pay my respects to First Nations peoples of all the lands we are joining from. Many of you will have been working in this space for as long as I have. And what a journey it has been. To begin, I invite you to look back on how our perceptions of child safety have changed over the past century. I can confidently say that none of you were around in 1900, but apparently, this is an example of a playground 120 years ago. It doesn't look too safe, does it? Yet I'm sure that at the time it was considered best practice. I have to say, I don't know many parents would allow their children to play on this equipment today. Maybe these playgrounds for the 1970s seem more familiar, a time when playground equipment took its cues from NASA and the space age. There was plastic, primary colors, and some sand to take the sting out of those inevitable tumbles. Today, children are safer than they have ever been on play equipment. There's a shade cloth to prevent sunburn and soft material on the ground to prevent the bleeding of broken arms. Playground safety has definitely evolved. Now this much more accurately represents the playgrounds our children inhabit today. And while they're engaging in digital spaces, the safety protections provided now are more akin to those of the early 20th century. Sadly, we've seen that we cannot place our trust in social media companies, app and game developers, and others to make their products safe from harm. Filters and parental controls that are not embedded or are bolted on as afterthoughts can only do so much. Our experiences in Australia have been echoed around the world. There is a decidedly darker side to being online, and a key part of my mission as eSafety Commissioner is to provide our citizens with protections from online harms and to help Australians have safer, more positive online experiences. At eSafety, we administer a number of regulatory schemes for Australians experiencing online harms. This includes a cyberbullying reporting scheme for people aged under 18, and soon, a formal set of robust civil powers to tackle serious adult cyber abuse. Today, my focus will be on the cyberbullying of young Australians. As you know, young people do not differentiate between their online and offline lives. This has never been more apparent than during COVID-19. And it is these blurred lines between their online and offline worlds that makes cyberbullying so insidious, as does the fact that social exclusion and other forms of humiliation are often quite visible to a child's peers, but are relatively hidden from parents, carers, and educators. Where a child could once physically escape bullying, now it doesn't stop at the school gate. It follows them home, in their pockets, on their smartphones, on multiple devices, and at all hours. There is also a disinhibition effect, where children and young people feel that they can post whatever they want, whenever they want, sometimes anonymously. This not only blunts feelings of empathy, but can also give instigators a sense of relative impunity. Of course, the pandemic has exacerbated these risks. In fact, we've seen spikes across all of our complaint schemes over the past 2 years. We have witnessed a 114% increase in reports of image-based abuse, or the non-consensual sharing of intimate images and videos, with over a quarter of these reports relating to children. We've also seen a 30% increase in reports of cyberbullying and more than a 35% increase in adult cyber abuse complaints. As the world's first online harms regulator, eSafety still operates the only government-backed scheme in the world which can order the removal of serious cyberbullying content from social media sites. The removal of harmful content has been a centerpiece of our regulatory efforts, and I'm proud to say we've been able to help thousands of Australian children find some respite from cyberbullying. Most of the time, all they want and need is to have the content taken down. And the more expeditiously we can do this, the better it is for a child's mental health and well-being. But because we know that this peer-to-peer bullying tends to stem from conflict within the school grounds, we'll often work with parents, teachers, and students themselves to get to the root of the problem. Our research tells us that 1 in 5 children have been cyberbullied, with girls being bullied more than boys, and this prevalence has remained largely the same over the past 15 years. The average age that cyberbullying peaks is 14, but we're receiving reports from children as young as 8. I'd like you to have a sense of what our investigators see every day through a couple of anonymized case studies. This is Dana. Dana's mother came to us concerned about a fake profile circulating on TikTok that used her 12-year-old daughter's full name, pictures, and videos. The fake profile captioned photos of Dana with serious name-calling and derogatory comments. Now, Dana lives with autism and did not necessarily recognize that she was being bullied. Fortunately, her supportive friends did, and they encouraged her to show the post to her mother. As a teacher herself, Dana's mother suspected that a classmate might have been responsible for the impersonation account. But her repeated reports to TikTok over the course of a week went totally unanswered. And while the school was sympathetic to Dana's plight, they couldn't identify the students behind the posts, so they too felt powerless to act. Now let's meet 16-year-old Shane. Shane was bullied for several months by multiple impersonation accounts on Instagram and TikTok. He did not know who was behind the accounts, but he knew that he had to report to the platforms. But Shane was increasingly playing a game of whack-a-mole. Once he reported and had one account removed, another would pop up with even more vile abuse, and his anxiety would escalate. He said it was like an avalanche of hate that he couldn't dig out of on his own. So finally, he came to eSafety for help. Our investigators described this incessant targeted abuse that Shane was experiencing as being phoenixed. As one account was closed, a new one emerged from the ashes. eSafety investigators found over 60 social media accounts using Shane's names, appearing to come from the same IP address. We alerted Instagram, who removed the impersonation accounts, and found even more abusive accounts coming from the same user. Unfortunately, our cyberbullying investigators see cases like Shane's and Dana's every single day. Since our cyberbullying scheme started, we've received well over 3,000 reports about the cyberbullying of children. And this is after the platforms they reported to failed to act. eSafety research from 2020 into the digital lives of Australian teens found that 44% of young internet users reported having at least one negative experience online. Their experiences also included unwanted contact from strangers or being sent unsolicited porn. Now that I've described what we do, let me tell you a little bit more about us. We were established in 2015 as the Children's eSafety Commissioner and had our remit expanded to keeping all Australians safer online in 2017. And in July 2021, eSafety's entire legislative framework was modernized with robust new powers. We were set up to serve as a safety net, providing Australians with a place to report serious cyberbullying, image-based abuse, and illegal online content. We help remove the seriously harmful content from the internet, but also serve to bridge that inherent power gap that exists between big tech and their Australian users. We are also Australia's one-stop shop for online safety education and prevention, bolstered by our internal research arm, which ensures we design and implement evidence-informed resources and policies. Our legislative mandate deems us as a leader and coordinator of online safety issues across Australia. And increasingly, online safety has become a clear focal point for our government. As a lone pioneer regulating social media, we had to write the playbook on online safety as we went along. And over the last 6 years, we've learned a lot. We believe we've developed a successful, practical, and replicable model that focuses on the 3 key pillars of protection, prevention, and what we call proactive and systemic change. It is crucial that these 3 pillars work in tandem to empower our citizens on the front end, anticipating risks and minimizing threats. Let me step you through our holistic approach. Our prevention pillar involves developing best practice resources and programs to prevent online harms from happening in the first place. We believe online safety education is a lifelong journey that should begin as early as possible, in the home as well as at school. Our research found that 81% of parents with preschoolers say that their children use internet-connected devices, and 94% of their children were using the internet by the age of 4. A standout product we released in 2021 is our best practice framework for online safety education. It is the manual for teachers, professionals, and others who want to educate children and young people about safer online behaviors. This is another page in our playbook, making sure the best pedagogies are used in Australian classrooms. We share these findings with our external trusted eSafety providers who deliver safety presentations into the classrooms. We built a community of practice and seek to lift standards of online safety education, whether delivered by teachers or the outside providers. We also support parents and carers with resources, advice, and learning activities. We've taken away the punitive fear-based messaging, any judgment about parenting skills, and the finger wagging towards young people that may be well-intended but does not result in long-term behavioral change. We're aiming to integrate and improve teaching and learning on these issues, to cultivate a generation of young people who are more empathetic, respectful, and responsible online. Now, the second pillar is protection. As I mentioned, we have a range of regulatory powers which include the takedown of illegal or harmful content, such as child sexual abuse material, pro-terrorist content, and image-based abuse. We are also seeing more children and young people experiencing technology-facilitated abuse as an extension of family and domestic violence. Through our eSafety Women program, we are developing a body of work to help deal with the kinds of intense pressures they experience in these destructive family situations. The third pillar is proactive and systemic change. This means both shifting the responsibility for safety back onto the online platforms themselves, but also staying ahead of the technology curve. This is the only way we can really shape the future and minimize the threat surface. We've known about online harms for well over 20 years, and the tech companies are also well aware of how their platforms have been weaponized. The recent Facebook files and whistleblower testimony in the US Congress has really brought this to light. Having myself worked inside the tech industry for more than 2 decades, often serving as the safety antagonist on the inside, I know the technical, financial, and intellectual capability exists in these companies to truly create a safer online world. What we have been lacking is the corporate will and the leadership to tackle safety issues at source and at scale. I think we can all agree that fundamentally, research is crucial for companies to understand how their platforms might be used or misused, and their effects on broader societal impacts and social behaviors. Of course, how companies use this research is also key. Will they use it to adapt, to innovate, and to remediate harms? Or will they simply sweep it under the carpet? Global outrage is definitely gathering pace, and understandably so. But our Australian experience tells us that piecemeal regulation is not going to fix this. We need to amplify the will, as we already have the way, and it is called Safety by Design. Our Safety by Design initiative encourages technology companies to anticipate, detect, and eliminate online risks so that digital environments are safer and more inclusive. For many companies, this means switching from a profit at all costs and moving fast and breaking things approach to one of moving more thoughtfully, investing in risk mitigation, and innovating through safety throughout the life cycle of a product, platform, or service. In other words, building safety in rather than bolting it on, so that safety is not an afterthought, an announcement in a press release, or response to a regulatory, revenue, or reputational threat. eSafety's Safety by Design initiative is a monumental game changer in the tech industry. Beginning in 2018, we consulted with 180 organizations to develop principles that were meaningful, actionable, and achievable. We built 2 interactive tools to help startups and more mature tech companies assess their risks and build in protections. These tools have now been downloaded by companies across more than 30 countries, from the Silicon Valley to the Silicon Tundra, and here in Australia, on the Silicon beaches. We have also embedded Safety by Design into university curricula so that the next generation of business leaders, product managers, engineers, and computer scientists can learn to code with conscience and be responsible technology leaders. We hope that by companies using Safety by Design tools and principles from the outset, they will develop products and services that work to enhance our diverse online ecosystem by bolstering user safety, not undermining it. We believe this approach will also enable much higher levels of transparency and accountability, and it is really the only antidote to the situation we collectively find ourselves in today. To pivot back to the fundamentals for us, I want to turn to the very strong research focus we have at eSafety and give you a preview of some data we'll be releasing in early 2022. This research looks at the impacts of COVID-19 on 3,600 young Australians aged 8 to 17 years old. Interestingly, we found, and this is consistent with other bullying research, that face-to-face bullying is more prevalent than cyberbullying in Australia. This is despite the proliferation of cyberbullying in the face of COVID-19. When we asked young Australians about their experiences online, 55% told us that they had been treated in a hurtful or nasty way face-to-face in the past 12 months. 45% told us they had been treated in a hurtful or nasty way online. More than half had also witnessed this happening to someone else as well. Now, I don't need to tell you that young people also reported significant emotional distress from negative online behaviors. As these stats converge, we were reminded of the dissolving distinction between the online and offline worlds. For young people in particular, this is simply their life. This shows how important government-backed reporting schemes are to the health and well-being of young people long-term. The findings also give us some heart, particularly with regard to how young people are leaning in and choosing to respond proactively to negative online experiences. In 2017, only 46% of young people blocked or unfriended people. By 2020, we have seen 64% of young people taking these actions. They are feeling empowered and taking control of their online experiences, and this is a fantastic outcome. Our research also highlights the active role that parents and carers have in keeping their kids safer online. Where before, families might have watched TV together or kicked the footy, now they are co-playing and co-learning in digital spaces. Our 2019 Start the Chat campaign encouraged parents to start the conversation about online safety with their kids as soon as their children had access to a digital device. Fast forward to 2021, and we can see children and parents are developing more confidence to speak about what happens online. The culture is changing, and we are overcoming some of the stigma attached to speaking up. Just like Dana and Shane, who we met in our earlier case studies, our research shows that 66% of young people told their parents of their bad experiences online, an increase from just 55% in 2017. To us, we can see the help-seeking messaging we're developing at multiple vectors actually changing behaviors. Our investigators see a similar picture when children report to us today. It is now more often through their parents, which supports and bolsters their mental health because they feel supported. Parents are indeed understanding the imperative in being engaged in their children's online lives and keeping up open lines of communication. I am pleased to say that this all feels a long way from the early 2000s when Professor Donna Cross's foundational research at Edith Cowan University drew our attention to the emerging online bullying being experienced by young people. eSafety is proud to be partnering with Donna and the Telethon Kids Institutes on their Beacon app, and we love the innovative use of nudges. We know that 95% of parents see online safety as one of their key parenting challenges, but only 10% will proactively seek out online safety education until something goes wrong online. That's why the pushing out of tailored messages to parents on the Beacon app is such a fantastic feature. We also know that not all children have trusted adults around them, and they may often talk to a peer, a sibling, or a friend. eSafety's Yes Project for secondary school students is a digital and social health program. This program is run across schools throughout Australia and helps students learn to be upstanders and positive online role models. Encouragingly, our recent research also demonstrated that our online safety messages are getting through to students. 60% of teenagers are now telling us that they would tell a friend about online bullying, compared to just 28% back in 2017. I am so proud that with time, we are seeing so much progress, and I know how tirelessly you are all working towards this shared goal. Let me briefly take you back now to Dana's story. You'll recall that Dana, her mother, and school officials felt powerless to act as TikTok had not responded to their reports. Our investigators responded to Dana and her mother within hours of receiving their report. We notified TikTok that the impersonated account was targeting a 12-year-old girl, which clearly breached their terms of service, and had been created for the sole purpose of bullying, shaming, and harassing someone. TikTok responded immediately by removing the content and the account for violating its community guidelines. Relieved, Dana's mother spent the next week teaching her own students about online safety. Online safety is now at the forefront of many governments' agendas. In Australia, we are evolving our legislation and protections to meet today's current threat trends and taking companies along with us. Just as we are calling on tech companies to innovate, governments must also lead the way. For the first time anywhere in the world, eSafety will formally start a new adult cyber abuse scheme, modeled on our successful youth cyberbullying scheme. This is our attempt to regulate at a high threshold, balancing freedom of expression with protecting people from harms that veer into the lane of online racism, homophobia, and misogyny. We will tackle extremely harmful abuse and impose significant financial penalties for both perpetrators and content hosts. To support more Australian children like Dana and Shane, our enhanced youth cyberbullying scheme will enable us to require the removal of material from the full range of online services, not just social media sites, as is the current arrangement. This includes online gaming platforms, content sharing sites, and messaging services where kids spend so much of their time. Our new Online Safety Act will also mandate a series of co-regulatory industry codes that will require a broad range of industries to not only proactively remove illegal content, but also restrict access to harmful content like violent pornography. The Act's commencement in January 2022 will enliven a set of basic online safety expectations for the technology sector. This will compel transparency reports and hold companies to account if they fail to protect their users. While children and young people are affected by online harms, we cannot afford to wait for tech companies to regulate themselves Locally and globally, there is so much more for us to do. I want to sincerely acknowledge the important body of work that the World Anti-Bullying Forum is doing, and to thank you for facilitating this wonderful joining of minds on the issues of bullying and cyberbullying. I also want to thank Donna Cross, who is herself an absolute beacon. She gave me such inspiration in the early 2000s when I was at Microsoft, and her work continues to inspire me today. I would also like to call out Samir Hinduja, who came to Australia for our last eSafety conference in 2019, for his incredible talent and important research around the correlation between cyberbullying and real-life harms. The cyberbullying.org website and the International Journal of Bullying Prevention are seminal resources, and I think we all recognize Samir as an innovator and as a special person deeply committed to supporting young people. I also pay tribute to everyone joining and sharing in these discussions around the world. Thank you for being part of this growing movement to put an end to bullying, wherever it takes place. The work you are doing is benefiting humanity and saving lives. Let me circle back one last time to Dana and Shane. We certainly hope their experiences of cyberbullying will not be repeated. But if they do experience cyberbullying again, or image-based abuse, or witness their friends and family experiencing cyberbullying, they now know where to go for help. I look forward to joining this conference again and taking stock of our collective journey, showing the world what is possible when it comes to protecting our children. My call for you today is that you take your important research and insights back to your own governments and engage with them about how they will improve online safety for their citizens, particularly their children. Stay connected with us and please join us on the 8th of February 2022 for Safer Internet Day. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Julie.